A number of Earth's mightiest heroes have new books coming out this week, but are they all home runs or are a couple of them swings and misses? Let's take a look. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, where I go over the books that I've picked up this week to give you an idea as to what I thought of them and whether there's something you should go back to the shop for. To start off with, I'm going to go with Supergirl number 1. So Supergirl number 1 is fresh off its Rebirth issue, and this really sees us expanding on that storyline that's running parallel to what's kind of going on in the Supergirl show on TV, but it's kind of making itself its own. To be perfectly honest with you, this is not going to be a book that I'm going to be picking up next time that it gets published, simply because I didn't necessarily find the story and the setting that engaging, and then the art style is definitely very distinct, and you know, while I certainly appreciate it, it's just not really bringing the book to me. It just, with everything else that's going on in DC Rebirth as well as the other DC titles, I just don't quite see a spot for this book on my pull list. So I'm sure that it's going to be great for other people. It's just not something that's going to be kind of, you know, one of my must-go buy books. Another number 1 that I picked up was Glitter Bomb number 1. So Glitter Bomb number 1 is really kind of this struggling actress kind of tale inside Hollywood, and it's mixed with some kind of Lovecraftian, mystical nonsense that's really going on in there. It's definitely odd. It's definitely weird. I'm probably going to pick up issue 2 just to see where these kind of things go, but the way that Jim Zub's introducing all these concepts, it seems really out of the blue. So there's got to be some sort of connective tissue to bring everything together, and I really want to get a better idea of what that might be before I really start passing judgment on a book like this. After Glitter Bomb, we're going to go to Killer Be Killed number 1, which didn't actually get released this week. The one that actually did get released is Killer Be Killed number 2 by Brubaker. So because I picked up both of these books at the same time, so it's one of those things where I'm really excited about what it's going to be about. I've heard very good things about it. It's just I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I can't really give you a solid opinion. However, a book I can give you a solid opinion about is Justice League number 4. So Justice League, I said this in the preview picks video, is a book that should really be hitting on all cylinders. It's got the best of the best in terms of DC superhero offerings, you know, as far as characters are concerned, and it should be really telling a AAA, you know, like a movie level story. Unfortunately, the book just isn't quite delivering for me in that respect. It's still very confusing. It's very out in left field. It's doing its own thing, and it's just not appealing. I hate to say it because I don't like to talk down to creators. I don't want to feel like I'm being critical, but ultimately the story is not well explained in any respect. There's very little reasoning for where the book is going or why people are taking the actions that they are, and it's loose in terms of its like narrative thread at best. It's just this big kind of hodgy-podgy dealings with aliens and purges and cyborgs and, you know, things in the heart of the, you know, world breakers in the center of the earth and these giant beings. It's just all over the place. And overall, you know, I'm probably going to stop buying it simply because it's not telling a kind of tale where I'm really going to be invested in it, and it's kind of disappointing. Maybe I'll pick it up later as a new shot, but as of right now, it's just not a book where I'd be like, okay, yeah, no, go read Justice League, it's great. It's just not there for me, so I'm sure some people like it, it's just not my cup of tea. And speaking of a book that kind of took a turn into left field, we've got Silk 12. So as you can see here, this says Silk is adventuring into the negative zone. So Silk, Cindy Moon, who was in a bunker for 10 years, she's a pretty smart person, but she's not necessarily genius levels, stumbled her way into a portal from some doctor to try and find her parents that are missing in the negative zone, and we end up in some sort of, pop culture referenced Lord of the Rings style encounter mixed with Game of Thrones and Mulan and all kinds of ridiculousness that's going on inside the negative zone as Cindy Moon finds her mom. And I very strongly disliked almost everything about this issue. I have no idea where this whole thing is going to be going, especially if it's going to tie into the clone conspiracy in like the next few issues. It's just unless this is some sort of elaborate psychosis, some sort of serious dream sequence that's going along with things, and we find that Cindy Moon has been under the influence of some sort of, like drug or something like that, which is kind of a really trashy way to retcon a story that's not necessarily working that good. I have no idea why we're here. There's no logical reason for this to be anywhere in Cindy Moon's story, and I don't know what Robbie Thompson's trying to do. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but, this book, it was, no. I'm sorry, I can't think of it in any better way to say that. Doesn't just, no, it didn't really appeal to me in really any way. And I've been following along with Silk since, the first issue, and wow. However, there was one book that I didn't really know where it was going that did kind of make a little bit more sense, and that was Harley Quinn, issue 3. So they kind of completed this whole zombie arc, and Amanda Conner, and Jimmy Palmiotti, they're doing a great job of writing this kind of playful back and forth between Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy and all this kind of stuff, and this whole group that's kind of surrounding her. It's very slapsticky. It's very much comedy for comedy's sake. There's not really a whole lot to take serious about the book. Red Tool is totally fine, and they're venturing down into these tunnels, and it's just one of those wacky adventure kind of books. So taking it out on face value, it's definitely okay. But the main reason that I keep picking up the book is for the Bill Sienkiewicz covers, which are awesome, and I really like them. So if you're a fan of the Harley Quinn book, I don't see any reason why you should stop reading. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to continue to pick up, once the Sienkiewicz covers are over. But I'm going to give it a go for those first, 5 or 6 issues where he's going to be doing those variant covers. One of those books that I don't need to pick up because of the variant covers is Nightwing number 4. So Nightwing number 4 sees Raptor and Nightwing heading into the Parliament of Owls and trying to take down this organization from the inside. And we kind of see this conclusion of this little 4-issue story arc. But there is a setup for a much larger premise that's going to be following along in the background. And so I'm very interested to see where they kind of take that. Overall, I thought it was a very good arc. There was the payoff was a touch underwhelming, but it was still very, very good. And overall, it's definitely a book that if you have any kind of interest in Dick Grayson, Nightwing as a character, you're not really going to be disappointed, at least in my estimation, with the book and where it's going. Next, I want to chat about Invincible Iron Man issue 13. So, Invincible Iron Man issue 13 is basically Brian Michael Bendis' way of setting the table for Riri Williams and then Victor Von Doom as the infamous Iron Man and Invincible Iron Man, or Ironheart, whatever they really coin her name to be. So, instead of really developing the story, we take Tony Stark and we put him into this very deep and dark kind of place, verging on relapsing into his alcoholism, where we see some great moments where, we understand why he was connected to Rhodes, why he felt that Rhodey was one of his best friends. But overall, there's very little in terms of actual story development and more just moving pieces around the board. So, it's an okay issue, but really, we're just setting up things so that way the decisions that are made in the future issues look more logical, look more like they're a place where Tony Stark would naturally go based on his current mental state. While Tony Stark is kind of wallowing in his own self-doubt, Stephen Strange is not really doing the same thing. Ultimately, he's trying to find a way to pick up the pieces of his broken world of magic. So we see a little bit of both worlds, like the original introduction of Stephen Strange, what he had gone through, what kind of measures he had taken to try and correct himself, what he did before he actually committed himself to learning everything about magic from the Ancient One, and what he's doing now as the Sorcerer Supreme, who has considerably less access to magic in itself, because there's less magic around, the Empirical devastated the state of magic around the world. And the cool thing is we get to see situations where it's just like, if the old magic doesn't work, Stephen, write new spells, create new magic, embrace and move forward in those respects. So I'm looking forward to see where Jason Aaron is going to take that kind of storyline, even though we see the reintroduction of a relatively familiar antagonist for Stephen Strange. I really appreciate the way this book is going. Probably one of the best books on Marvel's slate right now. And when I say that it's probably one of the best books on Marvel's slate, it's right next to Moon Knight, because Moon Knight number 6 kind of takes the original storyline that Jeff Lemire introduced and kind of embraces it. It pulls it in. It's just like, hey, you know what? You really enjoyed that kind of whole storytelling about who he was and how all these different people from Mark Spector's history kind of play into his mental institution. Now we're just going to do that in real time, in real life. So he's an actor, he's a cabbie, he's all these different people, and it just jumps in between these different art styles and these different storytelling pieces, and you're left wondering, where in the hell are we? And I love it. It's great. I really appreciate what Jeff Lemire is doing on this book, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. Another one that I can't really say too many good things about, and that is Superman number 6. So this is the end of the Superman, Son of Superman story arc. So we see the defeat of the Eradicator. We see the return of a super pet. The cat's not coming back, unfortunately. That Goldie's gone. But Crypto's back. And, he makes a very triumphant return to the DC universe out of the depths of the Eradicator. And that was pretty cool. I really like the fact that we can kind of get off the moon base that is going to cost Batman like $10 billion to rebuild, which he says he can afford, which is cool for Batman. But we see that, overall we're going to start to continue this very personal kind of storytelling aspect. So Action Comics is very action-oriented, and Superman is going to be very, it's going to serve a parallel, but it's going to be a much more personal style storytelling, and I love what Peter J. Tomasi's doing with it. So that's a book that I can't recommend enough, because I didn't really like Superman, and now I'm picking him up. So go for it, guys. It's a great book. Hop on. And while Superman's doing great things in his own book, in Aquaman number 6, he might not be considered the good guy. What we see here is that he's kind of like the president's, conflict resolution when it comes to Aquaman. And it comes to blows, man. And I have to give Dan Abnett a great shout out because he wrote a story. I dropped this book after like issue 2, issue 3, because I wasn't really engaged with the Black Manta and the embassy and all that kind of stuff. But seeing the culmination of this arc, getting down to the heart of what's driving Aquaman, is his fight for relevance. Because Superman's just like, hey, I'm here to help. Call the Justice League. We'll all help. We'll all sort this out. And Aquaman's just like, you're basically undermining the entire authority that I have as the king of Atlantis. It's just like, I have to rectify this situation. You are embarrassing me. You are basically defaming me. You are creating a situation where I feel like I probably shouldn't exist, and I need to do this. I need to fight for my relevance in this world and my own. And I was just like, yeah, bravo, man, do it up. Go fight your underwater war. Do it up, yeah. So they got me back in for an issue or two, just because if that's the kind of storytelling, it's much more compelling, and I'm really excited about where that aspect's going to go. So Aquaman is definitely a recommended pickup. For me, at least for this issue, if you want to kind of get to the heart of the matter. Definitely a great book from Dan Abnett. Another book that I've really been enjoying is Batman. So Batman number 6 is kind of a stopgap piece. So it picks up at the end of the I Am Gotham storyline, and we see how Claire, Gotham Girl, goes like full-on Britney Spears. She shaves her head, goes off to Vegas, starts partying really hard, and gives very little care for where she's at in her life. And while it's interesting to see how that person falling down kind of scenario, letting the depth of her disbelief, her dismay, her depression because of this situation get the best of her. Even like she was like, I am here to help the city. Is very interesting. The one thing that I will have to say, Tom, Mr. Tom King, who's writing Batman, is I'm not necessarily sure that the device that you used, Batman revealing who he is to try and relate ultimately to her. It's a decision, but I'm not necessarily sure it's a decision that most Batmen would make, but I'm interested to see where it goes from there. It's a great way to diffuse the scenario, but it's not necessarily what I'd be like. I'm like, if I'm Batman, I ain't telling nobody who my secret identity is. It's just that's too precious. However, it was set up by a very cool scene, very cool set of lines, where Batman's just like, Alfred, what did you do to me? What did you do to comfort me? How did you succeed? How did you help me? And Alfred's just like, Master Bruce, you go off into the night, dressed up as a giant bat, leaping off tall buildings and fighting crime as a vigilante. I don't really think that I helped you much. And that's very self-aware of Alfred to realize and understand that he may not have succeeded in, helping this child cope, and that some sort of better solution is a little bit beyond him. So that was very cool. Tom King writes a great Alfred. He's like my favorite Alfred ever. So that's cool. Definitely a book that I continue to enjoy, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do in the next two arcs. One is split between all three books, Monster Men, and then the next one, which is I Am Suicide, where Batman gets his own Suicide Squad. That's going to be interesting. Finally, we're going to get to a book that has not been a disappointment in the least, and that is Green Arrow number 6. So this is the introduction of a kind of any-centric arc, which I'm totally okay with. Green Arrow has consistently been one of the best books on my pull list, both arc-wise as well as storytelling. Ben Percy's been doing a great job, and this is more of the same. We get to see a lot of setup. We get to see some historical, basically we tie up very loose ends, and we're moving them into a very thread-like kind of state. So we start to see somebody like the Clock King come in as to be a potential antagonist for Oliver Queen, Emmy, and everything, as well as, the Sins of the Mother is the new story arc, so we get to see the involvement with Shadow and the Yakuza, and how those things kind of unravel around Oliver, especially after he's, taken down the Ninth Circle, the investment bank of villainy around the world. So definitely Green Arrow is always a recommendation. I can't speak highly of it enough. Great book. Go pick it up whenever you have the chance. So those are the books that I picked up this week and what I thought of them. But hey, man, you probably picked up some stuff that's different. So feel free to let me know what you picked up in the comments. And if you like what you see, hit the like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.